Hey, what's going on, guys? What's happening? YouTube, you guys have tuned into Rules for Rebels. I got an interesting video for you guys today, and I think you guys are really going to like this one. I'd also be interested in hearing your thoughts on this, so go ahead and drop a comment down below. So basically what we're going to be talking about today is overemployment. No doubt you've heard about people being underemployed, or you've heard about underemployment. You know, somebody works at a restaurant and they're only given 25 hours a week. It's not enough hours to be full-time or to, pay for their lifestyle. But it's also like too many hours to go out and find another job. Will meet the rise of overemployment. So this is kind of interesting. In the past year and a half, a lot of companies and a lot of employees have been forced to be part of this work from home experiment or this remote work experiment. And while some companies and some employees report that they're more productive than ever, others are reporting that they're not as productive, or they find themselves wasting time, or they're lonely or depressed at home. But then there's a third group of people out there who are more productive than ever, but they're not necessarily more productive at one job. They're more productive in that they're working for two and sometimes even three different companies. The title of today's article, and this one comes to us from raconteur.net, The Rise of Overemployment, Why Some People Are Choosing to Work Two Full-Time Jobs. And I believe there's even a couple people mentioned in this article, or at least other articles, who are holding down three full-time jobs. So why is this possible? Obviously, a lot of companies and a lot of jobs have gone remote. A lot of people are working from home. You have less middle management these days to kind of micromanage people and keep an eye on people. When you're working from home, you have a lot more freedom and autonomy, and people are kind of taking advantage of this lack of oversight. And rather than just working one job, they're working two and even three jobs. This seems to be becoming somewhat popular in the FIRE community, the financial independence, retire early community. Because think about it, if one job is good, and the goal of people who are following the FIRE lifestyle is to, try to save and invest 50% of your income. Well, what if you could work two jobs and have two salaries, or even work three jobs and have three salaries? That's what a lot of people are choosing to do. There's even one gentleman mentioned in this article who actually has a website called Overemployed.com, where he kind of tells his story, as well as sharing tips and tricks on how to do this efficiently, how not to get caught by your employer, etc. There's some people who even went out and bought another computer just so that, they can have the best chance of not getting caught by their employer working multiple jobs. One thing I've said since the very beginning of all this work from home stuff and all this remote stuff is we as a society, everybody was forced to do this for a while. We'll see if it keeps up with the Delta and the Lambda and the Omega and the Delta 5 variants and everything else coming out. But one thing that I've said since the beginning of this, if work from home is going to stick around, or if remote work is going to stick around, we as a society and a culture, especially when it comes to careers in the workplace, need to decide, why are we paying employees, right? Are we paying employees for their time, and are we paying them to sit in a chair from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock? Is that what we're paying somebody for, to sit in a chair for 8 hours a day? Or are we paying somebody for productivity, or are we paying somebody for a specific task? And if we are paying somebody for a specific task or their productivity, let's say just in another scenario, we have two employees. We have Tim and John. Tim is super efficient. Tim works a full-time job, which I think most people assume is a 40 or 50 hour a week job. But Tim works really hard. He's really efficient. He knows his job really well, and he can do his job in about 15 hours a week. Then you got John, who he's not as good at his job. He's not as efficient. He also kind of slacks off and takes smoke breaks and, gets a drink at the water cooler and, runs out for coffee mid-morning and in the afternoon. And he's not as efficient, and it takes him a full 45 hours a week to do his job. Should Tim and John both be forced to sit in a chair for 40 hours a week, even though Tim can do the job in 15 hours a week? That's kind of what we need to kind of look at and reevaluate as a society. And if we are paying people for a specific task, should a company really care if somebody's working two jobs? If somebody's holding down two jobs and both jobs are happy with their performance and they're doing everything that's asked of them, is there really a problem with working two jobs? When I was reading this article, it made me think of that episode of The Office where Michael Scott is living with Jan and she's running up all his credit cards, and he's forced to go get a job at the call center in the evenings. And even though that wasn't interfering with his day job, it's not like he was doing another job while at work. His boss wound up telling him, Michael, part of your contract, you're not allowed to have another job. Like, this is your only job. And Michael wound up having to quit the call center. But let's hop into this article. I thought it was pretty interesting. The rise of overemployment, why some people are choosing to work 2 full-time jobs. New work from home rules are being exploited by a small but growing group of employees who choose to work 2 full-time jobs at once. While advocates see it as a smart way to claim double pay, there are moral and legal issues to consider. The first rule of unemployment is don't talk about overemployment. That's according to one member of a growing community of employees who hope work... Oh, fuck it, they're going to make me register now? Okay, let me pause this because they didn't make me register before. Okay, so here we go. We're back in. The first rule of overemployment, don't talk about overemployment. That's according to one member of a growing community of employees who hope working 2 jobs can help them reach financial freedom. In an unintended consequence of the shift to remote working, these employees seek to exploit the lack of oversight managers now have and try to cash in on multiple paychecks from different companies and protect against the risk of losing a job in the midst of a pandemic. It's a trend that has found a home with workers in U.S. technology sectors where there's a high demand for talent and the emphasis is on productivity rather than face time with management or clients. However, there are also people joining the overemployed movement from the world of finance, design, and product development. One practitioner of overemployment who goes by the alias of Isaac Prince online decided to look for a new job after rumors of impending redundancies began surfacing at his current employer towards the end of 2020. But after being offered another position, he didn't hand in his notice. Instead, he decided to try to continue working both roles until his stock vested in the first company. He says, I thought I would try it for a couple weeks and then it turned into 3 or 4 months. Now, after nearly a year of balancing 2 full-time workloads, Prince has no plans to return to just one job. It really plays to my strength, he said. Once I had 2 jobs, I became a lot more relaxed. Is overemployment a growing trend? Price is not alone. Over the past few months, he has noticed a spike in people visiting his website. And we'll take a look at his website. If you guys want to check it out on your own, you can as well. It's overemployed.com. Work 2 jobs, reach financial freedom. And here he offers, tips and tricks and advice on how to do this. His website provides advice on balancing the demands of working multiple full-time roles, managing conflicting meetings, and establishing low expectations with your 2 employers without raising suspicions. The accompanying Discord channel where people share their experiences of keeping up a second or sometimes even a third job has more than 450 members. There's a great book. I think some of you guys have read it. I think we've talked about it before, but there's a great book by, I believe it's David Graeber, called Bullshit Jobs. And he says that like 90% of the jobs out there are bullshit and serve no purpose. I can't tell you how many people I read posts that they make on Reddit or some forum, and they're like, I have an awesome job. I maybe work 6 hours out of an average like 40-hour work week. And so people are able to kind of like leverage this and take advantage of this and work 2 and even 3 jobs sometimes. Although the potential to earn double the salary is frequently cited as a reason for joining, others wanted to remove the risk of redundancy. This was a particularly important factor for those in the U.S., as employers regularly subsidize employees' health insurance premiums, a particularly useful benefit during a global pandemic. Working 2 jobs is my way to ensure a good outcome for myself within the limits of what's acceptable. Price says software developers have incredible leverage. One developer can create millions of dollars in value for these tech companies. We are just treating ourselves like businesses and diversifying our incomes so that if one employer decides to lay you off, you still have another source of income. Chloe, another practitioner of overemployment who did not want to be identified by her last name, says, I have seen layoffs at every company I've worked with. Neither performance nor tenure mattered. Working 2 jobs is my way to ensure a good outcome for myself within the limits of what's acceptable. And while I can see how some people might argue that this is unethical, at the end of the day, a lot of employers are unethical as well. Employers don't have any loyalty to you, so why should you have any loyalty to them? And, I think a lot of people view employment as a game of cat and mouse. You're trying to get as much as you can and get over on the other person, and the employer is trying to do that as well. And, this work from home or this remote work experiment has kind of shifted the power balance a little bit and shifted the tables a bit in favor of employees, and they're taking advantage of it. A second member of the Overemployed online community who spoke anonymously has juggled a variety of web development positions across the UK and the EU over the past 3 years in what he describes as his double job fuck capitalism adventure. The process has not been without its stresses. At one point, he was fired due to a lack of productivity. The problem with doing 2 jobs is that you're working much fewer hours than would normally be required to achieve the right results. You need to be smart in the way that you do things. Although he is currently taking a break from working 2 positions, he enjoys the financial freedom that comes with having 2 full-time jobs. Working for someone else means that you're allowing somebody else to harvest the value you create through your work, he says. The only way to get out of it is to have enough money. The 27-year-old hopes that being overemployed will mean he can save enough money to retire in his 30s. What are the legal and HR issues of working 2 jobs? There is recognition that collecting a salary from 2 employers is questionable, with price comparing getting caught by a manager to being found cheating on your partner, but he remains adamant that it's all perfectly legal. However, this is how Slater and Gordon employment lawyer Jill Mackey sees it. She claims there are many liabilities and tricky issues associated with taking 2 salaries. Although unable to comment specifically on U.S. employment laws, Mackey adds the number one issue would be misleading your employer because of the duty, trust, and confidence that you have between employee and employer. Often if that's broken, then it's sufficient reason to terminate a contract. But do people really care? Like, if you can get away with this for 6 months and at the end of the 6 months you lose one job, you have another, you go out and seek a second job, I guess. Attempting to work more than one full-time job is a surefire way to achieve burnout. I don't think anybody's really necessarily trying to do this like long-term, but if you could do this for even a year, it's essentially like you've worked 2 years. The second issue relates to exclusivity clauses and conflicts of interest, as a second job is likely to be with a competitor in the same industry. Lastly, Mackey points out that points to the working time regulations, which applies to UK countries and the EU and limits workers to 48 hours a week unless opted out of. Although there is no limit on the number of hours employees aged 16 years or older may work in the U.S., employees must receive overtime for any time worked over 40 hours within a work week. I don't think that really comes into play here, because I think each employer is limited by that 40-hour work week with the overemployment. I don't think anybody expects an employer to pay somebody overtime because they're working an additional 40 hours a week at another job. Sarah Beaumont, director of HR at Hunter Adams, agrees that concealing a second full-time job from an employer could potentially be a breach of contract, but adds, from an ethical perspective, if an employee is being paid for the same time by more than one company, they are deceiving one, if not more, of their employers. If an employee is found to have deceived their employer, an investigation and disciplinary action would likely follow and could culminate in dismissal for gross misconduct, Beaumont claims. Legalities and breaches of contract aside, attempting to work more than one full-time job is a surefire way to achieve burnout, she adds. For Price and other members of the overemployed community, this may prove little deterrent. The secret, after all, is not getting caught. He accepts that one of his employers would probably let him go if they found out, but adds, I would tell people to go get the jobs that your skills command. If it's 5 jobs, then go for it. I would take all of them. So really interesting article, really interesting concept. I'd be curious to hear what you guys think of this. Is this something you would consider doing? Is this something you think you could pull off and you would have the time for and have the skills to do? And do you think this is ethical or unethical? Would love to hear your thoughts, so go ahead and drop a comment down in the comment section below. If you guys enjoyed today's video, give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to the channel, click that subscribe button below. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.